An ambitious process of consulting the Libyan people is underway. It's hoped this will end the turmoil that's plagued the country since the end of Gaddafi's rule in 2011. But can Libyans agree on their future? And what impact are foreign powers having on the process? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine Dennis. Now, Libya has been riven by a plethora of problems ever since Muammar Gaddafi was removed. Central authority has broken down and the country has a myriad of militias with a multitude of tribal loyalties. Add to that the outside players, the foreign powers with their own interests in Libya, and you have a recipe for chaos. Several rounds of peace talks have resulted in little. Libya is divided with two governments, one in the west and the other in the east. But a new UN-backed consultative process aims to break the stalemate, from oil revenues to powers of future government and disarming the militias. Libyans are having their say on the major issues that affect them in these public consultations that are being organised by the Centre for Humanitarian Dialogue. And it's hoped that this process can pave the way for elections by the end of the year. We'll get the thoughts of our guests in just a moment. First, Mahmoud Abdul Wahed reports from the Libyan capital, Tripoli.
These meetings are supposed to be held in several Libyan cities and will gather all categories of the Libyan society, especially those who have not got a chance to take part in the Libyan current political landscape.
I'm optimistic about this conference. Hopefully we will have a reconciliation in place and then we can return to the good old days. We are one nation after all.
We hope these talks will achieve reconciliation between tribes and cities so that we can be one hand in one state with one government and one people.
All the stakeholders should be one man. They should speak openly to each other. That's the way it should always have been.
Also, the meetings will gather former rebels, those who support renegade General Khalifa Haftar, minorities, municipality heads, even those who support the former regime of Muammar Gaddafi. And the aim of all these meetings is to come up with a solution to the Libyan crisis after gathering as many opinions as possible.
All right, let's take a closer look at how we got here. A 2015 UN-brokered deal led to the formation of a national unity government based in Tripoli, but a rival administration, backed by the renegade General Khalifa Haftar in the east, didn't recognise it. The two sides finally agreed to a ceasefire and to hold elections after they met in Paris in July last year, hosted by President Macron. 2 months later, a new UN envoy for Libya, Hassan Salameh, a Lebanese veteran diplomat well-versed in Arab politics, revived peace negotiations. But a new round of talks held in Tunisia late last year revealed the divisions were as deep as ever, and it ended without agreement. OK, let's introduce our guests now. In Tripoli, we have Salah al-Bakoush, a political analyst and advisor to the Tripoli-based House of Representatives. In Northampton, in England, we have Gouma al-Gomati, a member of the Libyan Political Dialogue that delivered the Libyan Political Agreement of 2015. And in Geneva, we have Christopher Thornton, Libya Programme Manager at the Centre for Humanitarian Dialogue. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us. Christopher, can I start with you? This is essentially your process, isn't it? How extensive is the process of consultation going to be? There are 6 million or so Libyans. How many are you actually going to be speaking to?
I would contest the fact that this is HD's process. This is actually, in fact, a Libyan-led process. HD has been able to provide support to the process, but in all of the meetings we've conducted, they've been conducted in collaboration with Libyan institutions, with Libyan participants, with Libyan people engaged actively in the process.
But the question is, how much of a genuine expression of Libyan political will are you able to get by these consultation processes that you've launched? I mean, what's the format likely to be?
So far we've conducted events in 6 locations throughout the country. So everywhere from Zawara in the far west. Today there is an event in Katroun, which is over 1,000 kilometers south of Tripoli. So you can see that we're reaching populations who've never been reached before, who've never been consulted, who've never been able to make their views heard. So, you know, the process is not going to be perfect. And as I said, HD is supporting the process, but we rely upon the goodwill and the participation of the Libyan people to make it a success. But so far, we've been really impressed by the level of participation, the level of engagement, and also the fact that people seem very keen to make their views heard and to try and contribute constructively to finding a solution to the crisis.
And can I come to Salah in Tripoli? What do you think of this process then? As Christopher says, it seems to have been welcomed enthusiastically by a great deal of Libyans.
I would respectively disagree with my friend Chris. The process lacks transparency and lacks coherence. Let me tell you, lacks transparency. We have no idea who has selected the people that will attend. And Chris cannot tell us how that happened. Next, HD, when it organized, I'll give you an example, organized a meeting in Montreux near Geneva last month. I was invited, and I was shocked to see in the meeting more than 8 members of the HOR in Tobruk, and not a single member from the State Council, which is the other party to the political agreement.
So you're suggesting that it's not balanced, that the process is not balanced?
We have no. The process. Let me give you a concrete evidence of this. I mean, we heard now that who made the invitations to each meeting is the municipal council in Benghazi, where one of these meetings was held on the 5th. The municipal council is led by a military-appointed mayor after the elected mayor had to leave the city fearing for his life. He's in Tripoli now, the elected mayor, and now a military-appointed mayor is now making the invitations to the consultative meeting in Benghazi.
Right.
Now let me move just to the coherence of it.
Can I just hold you there?
The meeting in Benghazi complained that they had no hand.
Sorry,
yes.
Salah, can I just ask you to pause for a moment? There is a bit of a delay on the line, but before we go back to Christopher, because I know Christopher wants to respond to that, let's hear the views of Guma Al-Gamati talking to us from Northampton. What do you think? Do you think that this is a credible process, or do you think, as Salah does, that it's actually skewed?
Well, I think we are working on parallel tracks. We have this track of societal debate, if you like, horizontal, bottom-up debate between Libyans, which hopefully will, at the end of it, deliver national reconciliation. And this, obviously, track, these national debates is obviously helped by the Center for Human Debate in Geneva, and I think their contribution is welcome and is positive, and I know they have contributed a lot to Libya over the last few years. But this track is not the main political track. This is not an alternative to other 2 crucially important tracks, and these are the political track, which is trying to amend the Libyan political agreement we signed in Morocco in December 2015, and try to get a government of national accord and a presidential council working more effectively again, possibly by scaling it down, the presidential council, to only 3 instead of 9. So that's the political track. But there's also equally an important other parallel track, and that's the constitutional track. We have a draft constitution that have been signed and ready since last summer, and a lot of people in Libya and Chris will hear from a lot of these debates now in various towns, including in my own town, city of Garian, a few days ago. He will hear from them that they want a referendum on a constitution first before we can go into any permanent elections. So the constitutional track is also important, where people are demanding that that draft constitution, which has been prepared and ready and needs to be put to the Libyan people for a referendum, as is stipulated by the
Okay, Guma,
the internal constitution.
Let's go back to Christopher.
Once the Libyan...
Let's go back to Christopher now. And Christopher, so you've heard some fairly robust criticisms of the process, but how exactly are the results from the consultation process likely to feed in to the political consultation that you are also helping to get underway, not to mention the constitutional process as well that Goma has just mentioned?
Yeah, I think as Mr. Gamati underlined, the whole objective of this process is not to replace the existing institutions and the ongoing processes, but to help reinforce them and inform them with the views of actual Libyans. So we're trying to have very much a bottom-up process of consultation where we consult as many Libyan people as possible in order to help reinforce and support and move forward the ongoing processes led by SRSG Salameh. And SRSG Salameh has made it very clear, and he made it clear today, that the outcomes of this process will be taken both as a steer for domestic policy, but also as a steer for international policy vis-à-vis Libya. Finally, to respond to Mr. Bakush, there are multiple ways to participate in this process, and we invite all Libyan people to participate in this process. And as I said already, it will not be a success unless there is an active participation of Libyan people. The process, you can contribute either by attending meetings, town hall meetings held throughout the country. There is also going to be meetings held internationally for Libyans who are not inside Libya. And finally, you can also contribute electronically in the website, multikalwatani.ly. So people are free to send their contributions, and people have already begun sending their contributions and offering to organize meetings in their own localities. And so we're very pleased with the uptake that we've seen among Libyan people.
Salah, what do you think of that? You don't look very impressed.
No, because Chris is leaving the question open. I mean, in these meetings, the most important question is who selects the attendees, on what basis, who selects the issues to be discussed, and on what basis. I mean, the meeting in Benghazi ended up with people complaining about HD handing down a meeting agenda, and it's asking more than 100 people to discuss the security issue in Libya in 1.5 hours, and the constitutional issue in Libya in 1.5 hours.
All right,
I mean, how could that be possible?
All right, well, let's move on now to the other issue. There is an ambition.
So maybe Chris can tell us how is this done.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Chris? Because then I really would like to get on to the issue of elections, which are it's hoped will be held this year. But Chris, go first, please.
Sure, thank you very much. And that's a very valid criticism. Obviously, you can't have a meaningful debate with that number of people in such a short amount of time. That's why the event that was held on Thursday in Benghazi was actually the launch of the discussions in Benghazi. And there are multiple discussions. We publicized the events that were going on in Benghazi on Saturday. There are planned events taking place all of this week and all of next week. So you shouldn't see these events as one-off isolated occurrences where people are asked to pronounce on obviously vital questions for their country in a very short space of time. Rather, they should be seen as ways to launch a debate, to engage people, to get them to start talking about issues. And as I said, they can feed back to us in a number of different ways. And everything is, of course, broadcast completely transparently. So it has been broadcast live on television. We'll also put the reports and minutes of all of the meetings on our website. And anyone who wishes to consult either the meetings of the minutes of the meetings, footage of the meetings, etc., is welcome to do so. All
right, let's move on now to the issue of elections, which it is perhaps optimistic. Guma, let's come to you in Northampton. Is it overly optimistic to even hope to have a democratic election held in Libya today when you've still got more than 1,000 militias basically controlling the streets and personal security is perhaps at an all-time low?
Well, I personally said and wrote that having elections in this year, 2018, is way over optimistic. But not just me. I mean, Human Rights Watch, the well-respected international organization, said that it's almost impossible to hold elections in Libya in this year because the environment is not there. The conditions, the conducive conditions to hold transparent and fair and free elections that everybody will respect the outcome of is not really there yet. But that's not the main issue, the main problem. The main problem for many Libyans is which elections are we going to have? Are we going to have elections for a new parliament and a president before we have a constitution, which means we are going for a fourth transitional period, which means we are just prolonging the status quo, more divided governments, more weak legitimacy, and so on? Or are we going to go for a constitution first, which we have the draft ready? It needs to be put to a referendum by the Libyan people. If they approve it by 2/3, then we have a permanent constitution that provides the most important supreme political legitimacy for a new political system and political order. Following the approval of that constitution, then that constitution will stipulate what elections we will have. We will have presidential and parliamentary elections and all the conditions and so on. And also, by going for a constitution first, it will give us a bit of a time to prepare the environment politically, security-wise, economically, to really have meaningful and successful and better chance of success of elections after the constitution. My personal outlook is that maybe we could have a referendum on a constitution this year and maybe presidential and parliamentary elections by the middle of next year, if not later.
All right, Salah in Tripoli, what do you think? Because of course the sequencing of this process is hugely important, and Goma has outlined exactly how he thinks the sequence of events should go. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, I share Jum'a's concerns. I don't think we are anywhere near elections this year. For example, I mean, security situation in Benghazi does not allow me, as a resident of Benghazi, born in Benghazi, my great-grandfather is from Benghazi, to go back to Benghazi. Just last month, Mr. Uruz, who is a colonel in Haftar's army, put on his Facebook that Salah al-Bakoush, I'm going to track you personally and I'm going to shoot you.
So personal security
how are you going to have elections in Benghazi like that? Secondly,
No, I was going to say, so personal security is a very serious issue.
Mr. Salama, in Benghazi, yes. Now, the second issue is that without a constitution, what are you going to do elections based on what? And Mr. Salama continues to send mixed signals. In his report to the Security Council last month, we were hopeful because Mr. Salama said the Supreme Court said its word that the constitution should go to a referendum. And now, when you look at the agenda that Chris and HD have sent down, they are putting part of the agenda discussion of fundamental issues in the Constitution. So what does that mean?
Okay, Christopher.
The Constitution is now open for discussion again, or what?
Christopher, this is for you to answer then, really. It sounds very much from our two Libyan guests that the process is being speeded along, maybe rather precipitously, and that could spell disaster if the country isn't ready for the elections. There's no point having them.
Yeah, I think that Mr. Bakoush and Mr. Gamati are absolutely right. If elections were held today, there would be potential for renewed violence. Elections are inherently divisive things, that you winners and losers. And in fact, one of the principal objectives of the National Conference process is to find rather common ground and commonalities between Libyan people to improve the climate for national reconciliation and thereby to bring about the conditions in which elections can be held. We have no interest in holding elections today which would not be accepted, which would divide the country, which would cause renewed violence. I think that the conditions for peaceful and free and fair elections need to be put in place before those elections are held.
All right.
And that's precisely the objective of the Multiqal Watan.
Can I jump in there, because we are running out of time, and I want to cover another issue, and that is the role of foreign powers. Many powers are involved either directly or indirectly in Libya today. Let me go to you first, Salah, in Tripoli. I mean, I'm just wondering what sort of efforts are underway to minimise, if not completely remove, the influence of outside powers in Tripoli in this process?
Nothing. I mean, the Emirates still hold sway, supported by France, and its work is done by Sisi and their people in Libya. We haven't done anything. The US, which is the only country that has enough carrots and sticks to do anything, is busy with other things, and Libya is not on its radar completely. And so we are now, Ghassan Salama, as a representative of the United Nations, reflects the balance of power in the so-called international community, which is swayed by the Emirates.
And is that what you think as well, Juma, in Northampton? Do you feel that the imprint, if you like, of the outside players in Libya today is still far too strong, and that is hampering the process for Libya to heal itself and move towards a new constitution and elections?
Well, look, we had 6 UN special envoys in 6 years in Libya. And all of them, their job was made very difficult by very detrimental, negative interference, especially regional interference, especially from some Arab countries. It seems that some Arab countries are absolutely determined to make sure that they shape the new Libya that's going to emerge into their own mold and the way they want it. And they want to make sure that they instill their own people to be there in power so that they can serve these countries' interests. This is really the crux of the matter. This is running against Libyan interests. Our own intrinsic interest is to have national unity, to have national reconciliation, to have Libyans run the country, Libyans shape the country the way we want it for the future. So yes, regional interference is hampering, is being very negative, very detrimental. Unfortunately, big countries like the US, the EU, and Russia, they could not do much or curtail these regional Arab negative interferences. That's one thing. But however, this can be offset by what the Chris and his center in Geneva is doing now, helping with the national reconciliation, because these societal bottom-up dialogues, if they can deliver at the end of it a crucial national reconciliation, maybe that national reconciliation will actually limit the effect of the negative detrimental regional interference, so that Libyans will come closer together and will not listen to those countries who are trying to use some Libyans as proxies to spoil it for us. So national reconciliation will be important. It will underpin any political process, and the political process should be based on a constitutional track and process as well. If we can get our priorities right, then hopefully we can make it and we can get there and we can succeed.
Christopher, final word to you, and can I ask you to be brief, please? There's a mountain to climb quite clearly. How do you hope that this process of consultation is going to, what do you hope it will yield in practical terms?
I think Mr. Gamati hit the nail on the head. I mean, the voice that has been missing so far in decision-making processes regarding Libya has been the voice of the Libyan people. And the idea of this process is to bring the voice of the Libyan people from all 4 corners of the country, from places that have until now not been heard, to bring that up to the international level. And Mr. Salameh has committed to the fact that he will bring the voice of the Libyan people, as represented by this process, to the highest international levels, and through that to come to an end to this ongoing crisis, this tragic crisis.
Thank you all very much indeed. Salah Al-Bakoush in Tripoli, Juma Al-Gamati in Northampton, and Christopher Thornton in Geneva. Thank you all very much indeed. Really interesting conversation. And as ever, thank you for watching the programme. If you want to see it again anytime, you can go to the website, aljazeera.com. Should you want more discussion, you can always get it by going to our Facebook page. That's at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And there's always the Twitter sphere as well. Our handle is at AJ Inside Story. I'm at Martine Dennis. So from me and the whole team here in Doha, it's bye for now.